And we're live.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to All Things Star Wars, the greatest Star Wars podcast in the galaxy. I'm Mr. Jason Roskam. With me here each and every single week, the Darth Vader to my Palpatine, Dave Martin. Hello, Dave.
Oh, hello, Jason. Hey.
were you sleeping there?
What? Who? What? No. I was busy in the chat, actually.
Oh, shit, I guess you should pull that up, huh?
I think today is going to be one of those days where the chat may probably it would hinder our primary topic more than help. Yeah.
Oh, boy.
So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Not that we're going to ignore you, Scott, but Scott Rasmussen's up on the chat.
Yeah. Though I wouldn't mind hearing his opinion about our main topic at some point, because what are we talking about today?
So and we decided very short time span that we're going to record here. We're trying to get back to our normal recording times on Sundays. So Jason came up with the brilliant idea, and it's something we talked about before about talking about the balance of the Force. You know, this whole concept of the chosen one, and what exactly is the balance, and what is that supposed to mean, and who is that supposed to be? So I think it's a little bit more esoteric episode. But we got plenty of shit to talk about before we even get to that anyway. But
oh yeah, I'm looking at our notes. I'm like, holy shit, man, this is gonna be a long episode.
Yeah, so that's hence our 30 seconds of silence right away.
Yep. So, all right. Well, let's roll right into it. We had a couple of new mini trailers released this week for Solo.
Right.
I guess they're like extended TV spots, but I watched both of them. One of them's called Risk and the other one's called Crew. And if you follow any kind of Star Wars anywhere on social media, I'm sure you've seen these pop up. And they were both pretty good. A lot of new scenes that we haven't seen in the previous two trailers. And I hate to admit it, but I'm actually starting to really look forward to this movie after seeing all of this stuff.
Yeah, the buzz, the hype is starting to it's slowly leaking, and we're obviously we're like really paying attention to what's coming out. So it's a lot different for us. So, but it's definitely things are coming out. They're paying more attention to it as we're just over a month away from the release. So, surprisingly, also, well, we said it after the trailer. It's like, damn them! Now I want to see this movie. Sons of bitches.
Yeah, it's looking good. We're still a month away, right? Yeah, hair over a month away.
Yeah, it's the 22nd today, so 25th is going to rapidly approach, and then it's amazing how fast this is going. However, it's good to see that they're at least getting some marketing stuff out there. There was a run of toys stuff out there, with the new characters, which I think we've been posting on and off our private message group and on the main page there in Facebook. So no, I'm looking forward to it. There's plenty. Honestly, we could probably do a whole nother episode of just analyzing more of the Solo stuff, and especially since I'm about halfway through the book. But we'll talk about that when we get to our week in Star Wars.
Okay. So yeah, besides that, we had a personal milestone, I guess, for the show, and that was finally, after it's been months now of talking about it, we finally crossed 100 subscribers for our YouTube channel.
Yes. I can't thank you, the listeners, enough for finally making this happen. Whether you had to steal people's phones to do it, knock small children down to get to access their YouTube accounts, whatever you had to do, we made it. So
yes.
That doesn't mean we need to stop, though. We can subscription. We not only we hit the 100, we're now enabled to have our custom URL that we're able to put out there when we put out any type of content, which is going to hopefully allow us to drive more traffic to the YouTube channel, and ergo, vis-a-vis, get more subscriptions, more listeners, and make the whole thing overall a lot better. Yeah. So thank you so much for everybody who came out there. The new URL, which will be posted everywhere probably immediately after this episode, is it's youtube.com/C/AllThingsStarWars. Yeah. The C is in there. I didn't have an opportunity to change that. I don't know why. Maybe it's because YouTube's like, well, good job, you got to 100. However, we're gonna let you customize, but we're just gonna leave a little bit of thing in here just to be dicks. So
we probably gotta get like 100,000 to get the full YouTube / whatever we want.
Yeah, it's whatever. But regardless, we're at the 100. We made the milestone. Thanks to all of our diehard listeners that I know did things they probably shouldn't have to get there, up to and including my wife. So she works in a dental office, and I'm sure that she was talking up the podcast at some point or another, and convinced people to sign up for the podcast. So thank you to my wife, and to Bronco Fett, and to Scott Rasmussen, and to Big Lovin', and all those guys, because I know that you had a lot to do with that. So
absolutely.
So now we're there. So now we don't have to talk about it as much.
Yes.
But still, push the subscription, push the URLs, push our social media contacts, and let's continue our numbers. We haven't talked about numbers in a while. We should do that offline, by the way. I'm curious about some number stuff. But yeah, 100 subscribers. We're actually at 101 when I logged in to start the show. We're at 101.
Nice.
So nice. We're there, and then some, and then some. Fuck all the haters. Fuck all the those copycat people are trying to get out there and steal our shit. We're legit.
Yeah, fuck those guys.
And if you're trying to steal our shit, remember, this is a bunch of veterans you're dealing with. Point like this or point like that. Like that.
There you go.
A bunch of veterans you're dealing with here. And we're not gonna be happy if you're trying to steal our shit. I'm not saying anything bad would happen. But you know what a drone is, right? Ever heard of a drone strike? I'm just saying. Especially
the AllThingsStarWars podcast does not condone the striking of people with drones.
Listen, I'm a retiree. I can say whatever the fuck I want now.
Well, I am not.
I'm not part of the Matrix anymore, so I'm fucking.
Jason Roskam does not condone the using of drones to harm other people.
There you go. Well, yeah, you should. I mean, drones.
Well, okay, drones by civilians.
All right, fair enough.
Or people on this podcast. So another thing that we've been talking about for quite a while now is our 1 year episode, our 1 year anniversary episode, which is coming next week now. After you listen to this, it'll be a week from then, which it's going to release on May the 4th of this year. And that is a Friday. So there'll be a little more than a week gap between when this episode airs and when that episode airs, but it's May the 4th. So we got to release it on our anniversary on that Friday. And
absolutely,
for anybody who's interested in doing a call-in spot, we've still got 2 or 3 spots available. So hit us up on either Facebook or Instagram, and we'll pencil you in, and we'll give you the details and all that.
And Jason, I did a proof of concept of that earlier with my iPhone. Although it was a little weird because there's like Clone Dave, happening through my iPhone, and I was showing off some my retirement gifts and prizes. But we know it works through Hangouts here, so we're looking forward to it. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
I could hear the feedback from the other side of the room. It was great.
Yeah, I'm
loud,
sure. I could
loud screeching coming from my headphones. So, all right, let's get into our weeks before we get into the main topic. So, for me, I want to give a special shout out to a lot of our hardcore listeners over on our Facebook group, because obviously we attract a certain type of listener based on our personalities. And the last couple of weeks when I keep bringing up the holiday special and you get agitated, they proceed to fuck with you on there by posting memes and gifs from the holiday special, which I think is great. Well, Big Lovin' made a post a few days ago. Basically, it was being serious too. It was being very sentimental. Like, hey, one of the things I love the most about Star Wars is enjoying the All Things Star Wars podcast, really kissing our asses, which, I like that. Keep those coming, please. And, I'm like, oh, that's great, man. I replied, I'm like, oh, thanks, man. It's just glad to hear that you guys like our content and all that. And then he comes back with, oh, I was just talking about Dave. So like, you fucking assholes. But, again, I love that. I love the fact that we attract these just fucking trolly assholes because, that's kind of who we are. So big shout out to everybody. And yes, keep all the compliments coming, even if they are all about Dave. It's still good to read that stuff.
Yeah, I'll take it. Lord knows my ego can use a nice little boost.
Yeah. But yeah, that was just great. Oh no, we were just talking about Dave. Fuck you.
As you should be.
Yeah. I also want to give a shout out to regular listener Scott Rasmussen. Is it Rasmussen or Rasmussen? I don't know. He's really got to correct us on this one of these days.
I knew actually in town I grew up with a Rasmussen.
Okay.
Spelled the same way. Now that doesn't mean he pronounces it the same way, but I'm sure he's on the chat, so he'll correct us here.
Yes, but either way, he's starting his own new podcast. In fact, his first episode is out there already. It's called Used and Abused. It's he's going to review music, old albums, and I think he's going to review like entire albums. And it's something you don't really see that often in podcasts. So it's the one thing about podcasting is you got to find your niche. You got to find something original and go with that because there's a million podcasts out there that are all doing a lot of the same things. So you gotta find your market. And I can't think of any podcasts that I've ever heard of that just review old albums. So his first episode is out there. It's really just a 10-minute introduction to the show itself, but I listened to it. Sounds good. He's got a very deep, strong voice. So
I'll have to confess, I haven't listened to it yet. I haven't really had time with as busy as the week has, but I did subscribe to it as soon as I saw it and followed him on Instagram. I'll verify the handle here for him while we're plugging.
Yeah, and I told him if you ever do Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band or Dark Side of the Moon or Pet Sounds from the Beach Boys, I want a guest spot on those.
Dude,
those are
totally
my favorite.
Have us both on for Pet Sounds because Pet Sounds is like the sound like the summer of 1992 was like Pet Sounds was like my soundtrack. There's a whole I could give a whole bunch of stories.
Now you do know the album actually came out long before 1992, right?
Yeah, no shit. It came out probably before I was born.
Yeah.
So what the fuck does that have to do with it?
I would just be curious to hear the story behind that, but we'll save that for another time. But yeah, go check him out. I think his first full episode is going to be released this coming week. So
yeah,
keep an eye and an ear out for that.
Scott, give me your over to chat. Give me your IG handle so we can pimp that because I can't find it here on my thing. I got too much crap going on over here. Yeah. As you can tell, if you look in the glare in my glasses, like, oh, look, all these screens all over the place. Fuckers. Yeah. Something about that.
So in Star Wars, I'm still playing the Old Republic. The Rat Ghoul Plague event is going on right now, and I'd never done that before in the game, even though I've been playing the game from the very beginning. And for anybody who doesn't know, the Rat Ghouls, they were introduced in Knights of the Old Republic. If you played the original Knights of the Old Republic for the better part of like 2 to 3 hours, you get to a part early on in the game where you go against these Rat Ghouls, and it's like the first really hard fucking part of the original game. And they carry that over into the Old Republic, and it's like this whole plague that spreads, and it all comes from the Rat Ghouls. And anyway, that event's going on right now in the Old Republic, and I've been doing that, so it's been a lot of fun. Unfortunately, that sale I was telling you about from the cartel market ended, so if you have a lot of cartel coins, keep saving them because, yeah, the good deals are over.
Do I have a lot of cartel coins, Jason?
If you're a subscriber, you get a lot every month, yes, as part of your subscription. So
I really got to play that game. I think I talked about
as we'll find out. As we're about to find out, you don't have any more excuses because now everything's over for you. So
that's not true. I still have to find employment. That's kind of a big deal.
So you say.
I'm just saying. Bills need to get paid.
Yeah. Otherwise, for me, I've got 2 very important tests coming up this coming week. I've been dealing with a bunch of other stressors too. So, yeah, I may not be on social media much, or I definitely won't be playing the Old Republic for at least a few days because I've got just a lot of shit going on. And then hopefully I get through all of that stuff unscathed. And then we've got the Avengers coming out this coming weekend. I've got tickets for that already for Saturday morning. And get this, not a single person in my class wanted to go. When I went and saw Ready Player One, I had like fucking 6 people from the class that I'm in right now. They are all like, yeah, let's go see it. Fuck yeah. And then for Avengers, they're all just like, yeah. I'm like, really? Like,
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's actually, I would not have expected that at all.
Yeah, a class of 10 computer nerds, and not a one of them besides me wants to go see Avengers on opening weekend.
Huh.
Yeah, really strange. So whatever.
Maybe they know something you don't.
Yeah. So for next week, for the May the 4th episode, I may just give a quick review of the Avengers, tell you what I thought of it. So we'll see. But that's been my week. What about you?
For me, I watched The Empire Strikes Back the other day, just to have something on in the background while I was messing around. What's remarkable, watching Empire Strikes Back is still, like, to this day, anytime I watch any of the original trilogy, is like how well they did the effects. For what they had, and they're like, for the Tauntauns, they're little fucking puppets that they're moving with the stop, animation, the all the matte paintings and just everything about that made the original trilogy so epic. It was just nice to just sit there and just watch it and appreciate it.
Yeah.
What else did I do? I read some of the Solo book. I'm about halfway through it, and I'm going to tell you, it's written a little bit differently than a lot of the Star Wars books I've been reading lately.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's it's something that first of all, first things is the timeline. This is taking place after Aftermath, and I think we talked about that in the last podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, so, you read the cover insert and all that.
Yeah, exactly. So, the timing and setting yourself up for where that is in the timeline, it makes things a little bit easier, I think, actually, because you already have a feeling for the characters, as opposed to if this was something like leading into the Solo movie that you don't really understand where all the characters are at given points. There is flashbacks, and I will say that Santa character from the comic books that we've talked about in the past, she makes an appearance.
Oh, okay. So they are keeping her around. All right.
Yeah,
that's good.
there is what I will. I without any spoilers, I will say that there's a lot of character integration through different parts of the canon that they're doing that I think they're doing very well.
Good.
In this particular book. So I've enjoyed it. I just haven't had time to read. I was actually, I was in the car with John, and he was going into a baby doctor appointment with his wife, and I was riding. It's whatever. It's a long story, but I was stuck in the car for like an hour, so I ended up plowing through a lot of the book while I was sitting in the car waiting for him to come back. So
nice.
Fortunately, I had it on me. Yeah, it's good. I would recommend it. I would recommend people pick it up. I'm curious to see how it's going to get us teed up for the Solo movie, like, because there is some referencing to things that we don't know about, like, until you read this book. So, I think it's going to. I think it may give you some insight into some of this stuff, and some of it maybe not. So, what else? What else? Oh, so I think if you've heard me talk about on the podcast where the toy store, what was that toy store called again?
Play With This Toys and Collectibles.
Yes, in Merchantville, New Jersey. So yes. I'd gone in there for the one time, and I saw this toy for the video audience. You can see it, but I have a Millennium Falcon. It's about, I don't know, probably about 5-6 inches long, and it's
it is.
That is indeed what she said. This is a 1979, Kenner Corporation original. I had this thing when I was a kid. It's got retractable landing gear. It's got an articulating, cannon on the top. Mine, when I was a kid, I lost this fucking dish like immediately.
Really?
Immediately. So almost the entire time I had the toy, I didn't have the radar dish. This thing is in pristine condition. You can still see the camera's not going to pick it up, but you got a likeness of Han and Chewie sitting in the cockpit, and it is just so spectacular. It's in such great shape. So there was another thing that happened this past week that took up a lot of my time, and that was my retirement ceremony. And this was the gift from my cousin Rick. And we talked about the store, and I think he heard me talk about it on the podcast, and he had picked it up for me. And nice. That's Sly Dog too, because he had said at one point we were talking about something. He said, "Oh yeah, I didn't see it in there anymore." I was like, "Ah, shit. Oh well, just wasn't meant to be." As it turns out, it's because he picked it up. So nice. Thanks, Rick, for hooking me up with a piece of my childhood. And he wrote a real nice note. That was part of this stuff. And it's had this ceremony thing that pretty much ate up every minute of my week last week for my retirement ceremony. It was pretty spectacular. I mean, I've actually been retired out of the military since February. I held up my my actual ceremony for a while to get some people there. Unfortunately, I couldn't get Jason there.
No.
My niece actually used my dad's phone and recorded it on Facebook Live. So all hour and 5 minutes of it, only about I think my speech might be 15 minutes of that. If not more. Jason knows I'm a talker when it comes to shit like that. You put me on this.
No, not you.
You put me on a stage in front of people, and for somebody who has such severe social anxiety, if I'm in that situation, I actually can find myself doing fairly decent. So I'm really good at the facade, as it were. But it was great. There'll be pictures and stuff on Instagram once you get everything hung up. This whole scenario is going to change behind me. All of my temporary stuff, and but it was really good, and it was exhausting. If this will after this podcast will probably be the longest amount of time I've spent sitting still, besides sleeping. So. Right. Anyway, that was my week.
Yeah. All right. Anything else before we get into our main topic?
I do have Scott Rasmussen's for his podcast. His IG handle is Used and Abused Pod. So follow him on Instagram. Used and Abused Pod. I'm pretty sure that the All Things Star Wars podcast is already following him. If not, we'll remedy that. I know I'm following him personally on my personal IG. Get in there. Yeah, he's a great supporter of our podcast, and to kind of piggyback on what Jason said, I know there's a little bit of back and forth, about the first episode and it kind of feeling weird and everything. It takes a while to get your flow going.
Oh, sure, yeah.
The episodes will start it'll start coming together, and you'll feel like it'll be a little bit more natural, and then it's fun, just like what we're doing. It's fun. We enjoy it. It's something worth making time for. And that's, if you're not enjoying yourself, if you're just doing it for the sake of you feel like you have to, then you don't bother, because we'll know. People that are listening know that, all right, this person's not really interested in doing this. So you got to have a passion for it. You got to enjoy it, and you really got to keep your expectations low as far as I mean, I would love to say that we were yes, we want 500,000 followers and all these downloads and everything else, which I do want to talk about numbers later. But it's, our expectation is that we're going to talk about Star Wars for a couple hours and enjoy doing it. So that's the expectation. And if a lot of some other people enjoy it too, great. And it just makes it that much more fun. So anyway, that's enough Use and Abuse podcast free advertising for this episode.
Right? Yeah. So I expect a full favor in return from Scott. So we shall see if that happens. I'll be listening.
I will be too.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
So this is a topic that I've actually wanted to talk about for quite a while. It's something that I'm constantly thinking about. And it's kind of two different topics that are really closely related. It's first, the whole notion of the Chosen One that we're introduced to in Phantom Menace, where we never heard shit about this prophecy before, but apparently there's a tornado heading towards Hurlburt Field, which I'm getting text messages
you still
about.
Get those.
Okay.
Well, at least you're closer to Hurlburt Field now than you were before.
That is true.
Hurlburt is only 2-hour drive from where you're at right now.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. So at least some of that weather that could potentially be severe is at least in your general vicinity within a state or two, as opposed to across the country.
Yeah, that's probably the manifestation of the thunderstorms that rolled through here about 4 or 5 hours ago.
Probably.
Anyway, so getting back to the whole prophecy. So we're introduced to this whole concept of a prophecy that told of the Chosen One that would bring balance to the Force, right? This is what Qui-Gon Jinn assumed Anakin was. And as far as I know, we don't have the full text or the full transcript of this prophecy. It's only these little veiled references that we've been hearing about throughout the prequels, and they don't really touch on any other canon. Maybe a little bit in the Clone Wars, but we don't hear a whole lot of it. So one part of our discussion is going to be about this prophecy and about who really is the Chosen One, or do we even know for sure who the Chosen One is? And then also talking about the balance of the Force, because that is one concept that constantly keeps coming up in Star Wars. Hell, they talked about it quite a bit in The Last Jedi, the whole balance factor. And problem?
No.
What's going on?
Nothing. I'm fine. Just keep going.
Okay. So anyway, the whole balance thing, and it all ties in together with the Chosen One, because allegedly the prophecy says the Chosen One will bring balance. So the whole question is, well, what is balance in the minds of whoever came up with this fucking prophecy? So that's kind of where we're going with this discussion today.
I agree with everything that Jason just said.
Were you even paying attention?
I was. No, I absolutely was.
Well, you were over there looking at something else, chuckling the whole time.
Always looking at something else. Anytime that Jason's talking, I'm looking and doing something else. Come on, we're radar operators. We can multitask. You know, I wanted to bring the Chosen One up on Wikipedia over here just in case we needed something for reference, like a name or something like that.
Yep.
What I really wanted to do before we started this episode is go into the in fact, I'm going to do it now. So I might not be on the chat. Sorry for those of you who are on there. For the making of Star Wars, and I'm curious to see if the prophecy is mentioned in here. One of the things that I've noticed in the past with George Lucas's original thoughts on some things, you know, for New Hope, for the original Star Wars, and we've alluded to it in certain contexts in the podcast where it's like, you know, he had even well before the prequels even came out, he had a preconceived notion about the midichlorians. It was something that he believed was part of the Force and what made the people, Jedi or Sith, more susceptible to being able to use the Force. This midichlorian concept was already out there. Yeah. So I'm just going to type in prophecy to the...
And while you're doing that, I will preface this whole discussion with, according to Wikipedia, there is an interview out there somewhere with George Lucas where he flat out confirms that, yes, his vision was that Anakin was always the Chosen One, despite going dark and all that stuff. And we'll get into the details of that later. But my response to that is, first of all, George Lucas isn't in charge anymore. And he never solidified that anywhere in the Star Wars canon, that Anakin was 100% for sure the chosen one. So
No,
that,
and honestly, he shouldn't have. Like that, if anything, it's prophetic in and of itself, because if he had nailed somebody down, then you'd be tied to this storyline.
Yeah.
You know, at least by not doing that, then he gives himself a, you know, more flexibility in how he wants to write the rest of the stories.
Mm. And I think to discuss the chosen one, you have to first discuss what is the balance of the Force, because that's what this prophecy claims, is that this chosen one will bring balance. Now, if you listen to it from the point of view of the Jedi in the prequels, who I've already expressed my opinions on them, how incompetent they were, and they even talked about that in The Last Jedi, the hubris, as Dave loves that word, of the Jedi, allowing Darth Sidious to rise, wipe them all out, blah, blah, blah. So it makes me think like they may have skewed this prophecy, interpreted it their way so that they can, I don't know, feel good about themselves. Like to them, maybe balance was full light side, no existence of dark side whatsoever. And I think we can both agree that that's kind of horseshit.
Yeah, and that's fuck, I lost my train of thought. Let me preface this thought, and thankfully Jason will have truncated silence on this when it comes out. But like one of the things I wanted to make sure we talked about in the beginning of this is that yes, you did make a comment that, you know, George Lucas isn't in charge anymore, but we have to take everything in this particular conversation. My thought pattern is that everything is Star Wars right now. Everything that's out that is canon, the timeline that it's released in the Star Wars universe is the timeline where you have to make that consideration. So when we're talking about, you know, even if I did find something in the New Hope that where Lucas would have talked about the prophecy, it really doesn't matter because it wasn't part of the canon.
Right.
And even though Phantom Menace came out in '99, we're not talking about what happened pre or post that. It's all part of the Star Wars universe timeline. So as they talk about stuff like this, and then that's kind of the revelation as it would happen. You have to, for me, I'm looking at it, it's like, okay, we don't really, nobody really talks about this prophecy until we get to Phantom Menace. And at this point in Phantom Menace, the Jedi are in trouble. You know, things are like, it's not all, you know, sunshine and roses for what they're going through. Now, granted, the Jedi Academy and the Jedi Temple and everything seem to be thriving, but this is you know, it would seem that the veil of the dark side has already started to fall on the Jedi.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And we see this in Phantom Menace because they're not, whether it doesn't take Mace Windu in, I think he says in an episode 2 or episode 3, where he says that we've, you know, lost our ability to use the Force or something like that. It doesn't take that type of large revelation. You're seeing it within the plot line of the story that the Jedi they're missing shit. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so this mention of a chosen one or anything else, it seems in times of peril, you know, what do people look for? You know, they're looking for some sort of hope.
Yeah, like a savior.
Yeah, exactly. So then what happens? Well, there's a prophecy that, you know, we can look forward to. You know, think about modern day religions, or even ancient religions. And you know, my research going into this, you know, I thought about a lot about Western religion or Eastern religion, I guess is an appropriate term. You know, talking about like Chinese, like the yin and the yang. We're talking about balance and everything.
Yeah.
And one of the things that, you know, I had the opportunity while I was still in, I got to go to one of the special ops courses where we talk about Eastern religions and cultures, and, you know, the whole concept of balance in their religion and the Taoism and everything it had a lot to do with the flood cycle. You know, they would have this massive flood cycle that would wipe out and basically destroy everything they had, but then make the ground fertile again so that they could go and be prosperous until the next flood season when it would come back. So the yin and yang was so dependent on, like, that balance is so dependent on what was happening environmentally. And I think we can apply a lot of this mentality to the Force. Like, they know that it's unbalanced, because if there is no Sith, they're not fighting the dark side, then they're constantly seeking some way for the balance. They're waiting for the flood to come, which is happening. And from a perspective of like, okay, what do we need? We need some sort of hope. And okay, now we create this prophecy. In some time, it could have been 1,000 years before that, where they said that the prophecy could occur.
Yeah. So, and let's talk about this, because as you're talking about the balance, the flood feeding the life, that is one thing. As much as we've shit on The Last Jedi, I think that is one thing that they actually really nailed and really hit well in The Last Jedi. It all started with that scene with Rey on the rock for the first time. Luke telling her to reach out after he slaps her hand. And she's looking around the island. She sees life, death, peace, violence, light, dark, the balance. And Luke even says, yes, it's the balance. Powerful light, powerful darkness. And it came up again later in the movie when Snoke was talking to Rey, and he's like, darkness rises and light rises to meet it, and talking about Kylo Ren and Rey. And I think they really nailed the whole balance of the Force. And I think that's kind of the perfect representation of how balance should be in the Force. Now, I don't know if that's what George Lucas had initially intended, but I feel like even throughout most of the Star Wars continuity, that is true balance, because you'll have times where there is an imbalance, and eventually that gets corrected.
I think, well, and that's the thing too. It's almost, I agree with you that it's probably the first time in the movies where we actually have a representation of the balance. So much so that, all right, now it's in a mosaic tile in the middle of this cave, where you see this ancient figure sitting, and it's almost like the yin and the yang. You see that there's it's a portrayal of balance within this ancient temple. And then, so it's visceral here. It's right. It's not just something that it's so esoteric that we're not, you can't even really place anything to it. Now it's like, no, it's right here. We're talking about balance specifically, and how things are out of balance again. But that being said, so if we're talking about balance in the Chosen One, we have to talk about that ultimate question, like, who is actually the Chosen One?
Okay. So, I mean, do you want to like throw names out there and talk about whether or not this person could be? Because I have my own theories about this.
So, I mean, for the first name that I would throw out there, and then we can build on that with your theories, the first one that they want us to believe is Anakin. Because that's the one they say.
Yes.
Qui-Gon's convinced that he's the Chosen One.
The virgin birth and all that.
The virgin birth and all that stuff, which, again, that's left up to interpretation too. But that's who we're led to believe is the Chosen One. So, what do you believe? Do you believe that he is the Chosen One? I mean,
honestly, and not because of what Lucas said, but because of my own observations and my own theories, I believe 90% that it actually is Anakin, and not for the reason that you would believe. The reason I feel like Anakin is the Chosen One and why he was the one to bring balance is because when he showed up, there was a massive imbalance, all right, but it was all light side. There was almost no dark side at the beginning of episode 1. Now, you do mention like the cloud of the dark side was starting to fall, and it was really only Palpatine, Darth Maul, maybe a couple of the little players in there also. But otherwise, we had 1,000 fucking Jedi on the other side, all light side users. And to me, that means a huge imbalance in the Force. Now, the Jedi and their hubris interpretation of the prophecy is, oh, the balance means that there's going to be no more dark side, and it's going to be all light. That's balance. Where it's like, no, the balance truly comes when all this overabundance you have on the light side is wiped out and the slate is kind of cleaned a little bit. And that's why I think more than likely Anakin was the chosen one, but not for the reason that the Jedi thought. He brought balance by eradicating a majority of the Jedi Order to equal things out.
So I agree with you. I agree with you that Anakin, insofar as whatever the prophecy may be, he is the chosen one. Again, not because he's bringing, making the light side stronger, but he had to be the person to initiate basically the age of the Sith, the age of the Empire, for lack of a better term. But saying that, I think that the Jedi, most of the imbalance was because they were keepers of the peace for so long. And as they watched the Senate, I think they watched the Senate and the things that were happening in the Senate, and they saw that there were things that they just could not control.
All the corruption and everything.
Yeah, all the corruption and in trying to keep the peace and not ruling, because they're the Jedi. They're not there to rule. They established that. They're not the people rule themselves. This Galactic Senate and the Republic and everything that stood. They're there to help keep peace and keep uprisings down and things like that. The reality is that goes against everything that they were supposed to be doing. What they should have been doing was removing themselves from that and not working for the Senate. But by standing there and watch all these things happen, now they're involved. Now they're like, what can we do to stop this? And that's where the imbalance is. It's the fact that the people being people. And again, I'm gonna make this point that I have in the notes as we make an allegory to the Matrix here, which is easy for me. I'm obsessed with that movie. You look at the Matrix and you see what people just in general need to have some sort of chaos. They need to have imperfection in order to thrive. And the Jedi, this idea that peace is everything,
right,
is doomed to failure. What's in the Sith mantra? What's the first thing in there? It's like, peace is a lie.
Yes.
Right. So, which is the truth, because we have to, as human beings, these are human representations in here. So, the human instinct is one person to be a leader. Everyone's looking for some sort of leadership. One person wants to take something over from somebody else because they appear weak. This is always going to happen. And the Jedi stand there and watch these, basically the humans and the rest of the galaxy, for that matter, all fall into this chaos, and they're helpless to do anything about it, because otherwise that would mean that they would have to step in and rule. And they allude to it in the movie, in the plot lines, where it's like they lead up to that, going into when Mace Windu goes into the, basically the Emperor's throne room at that point. Be like, look, we're going to take over because this shit's going on long enough. And that's the tipping point, because what does that do for Anakin? Anakin sees that as like, no, that's not what the Jedi are supposed to do. Now you are definitely the bad guy, because you're not representing what the Force, what the Jedi are supposed to be doing. It's not our job to lead. Taking over and trying to lead is not part of what we do. Hence, pushing Anakin completely over to the rest of the way to the dark side. Yeah.
And even before that scene, though, too, like Mace Windu and Yoda, and I think even Obi-Wan was in on that conversation. They were talking about it, like, all right, this is before they realized Palpatine was a Sith. Like, all right, if he doesn't give over his fucking emergency powers when all this shit's done, we may have to roll in there and take this ourselves. And that's when Yoda's like, oh, we're getting into some dangerous fucking territory here.
Yeah. So. And I think Yoda probably, at this point, I would venture a guess to say that Yoda kind of sees this coming. Yeah. One way or another. Even sitting there talking to Anakin and talking about, like, dangerous things are happening here, knowing that there's things that they can't control and that things are going to happen regardless of what the Jedi Council does. And I think that's why Yoda is like, all right, I'm going to pick up the clone army and we're going to come back and we're going to get ready to fight this battle because we don't have any choice. Yeah. You know, the diplomatic solution is over. But saying that, to coming back to the chosen one, Anakin he's the point. You know, he's the point where the balance is going to go one way or the other. I'm doing for the YouTube audience like a physical representation of something balancing, and which I didn't need to describe at all, honestly, and nobody would have. So sorry, but I think we can't forget that Palpatine is pulling all these strings.
Yes,
at the dark side and Palpatine, the Jedi's hubris, and what's going on in the Senate and everything else. Palpatine is basically doing all the manipulation, with the Senate especially, and doing all these things, knowing full well that the Jedi can't do shit about it because that's not what the Jedi are going to do. So he is the most powerful being in the galaxy because he knows that he's controlling everything that happens, and he knows once Anakin Skywalker comes into his life that he's like, this is the guy. He's going to be standing there, and he's the guy that's going to push this over, and he's going to help me eliminate the Jedi Order.
Right.
And granted, it's not in the dark side. Like Palpatine's not like, oh, I'm going to create balance in the Force because we need more Sith hanging around, and then we can all kind of cohabitate. No. He just
wants to rule.
Yeah, he wants to fucking dominate everybody and push everybody to, let's get this fucking scale all the way over to the dark side.
Yeah.
So that I can fucking rule and eat gummy bears or whatever it is. What are you eating?
Peanuts.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Sidebar, my Kathy and Kate are at Longwood Gardens and are sending me pictures. The spring blooms. If you're in the Philadelphia area, I highly recommend Longwood Gardens, especially this time of year. It's fucking amazing, especially on a day like today. Anyway.
Yeah. So you brought up Palpatine. He was one of the other people that I thought, okay, maybe he is the chosen one because, yeah, it was his doing is what wiped out the Jedi and brought it down to basically like 2 dark side users and 2 light side users after all was said and done at the end of the prequels.
So I think we're in agreement that for our perspective,
you saw the chat?
Yeah, I just looked at the chat. Mistake. Shouldn't have looked. Bronco Fett believes that Wicket is the chosen one.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm surprised he didn't say it's Nala, is the chosen one.
Mala.
Whatever. Fucking holiday special bullshit. The holiday special is the chosen one. That is what's not providing this unbalance in the Force.
It was B. Arthur's character all along.
Oh, mother that bitch. Anyway.
And now Dave's all frazzled.
Somehow. Anyway, no, so it comes to the conversation like if you and I talking about it, yes, Anakin, virgin birth notwithstanding, that's just the huge like, hey, look, this is the guy, kind of indicator, like the Jesus, virgin birth type thing, get you to believe that this guy is the second coming or whatever, or the first coming. And I guess there was no coming, right? If it's a virgin birth.
That's a good one.
Anyway, this is this is a potty mouth podcast. Sorry, I can't help. I can't.
That's why we have that explicit tag.
Exactly. So with Anakin being the chosen one, then what is the balance that he's trying to create? Is it the elimination of the Jedi Order, or is it knocking up Padme and creating basically the opposition? Because that's what he's doing. Like he's basically creating like in the elimination of the rest of the Jedi. And again, we have all these side stories with coming from Rebels where there's Jedi that survived, and there's Force sensitive people and things like that. So we're not necessarily just talking about Sith and Jedi here. What we're talking about is this larger picture of what's going on as far as the balance and what Palpatine is controlling. Okay. So was it Palpatine's intent with Vader to get Padme knocked up to create Luke and Leia? I would say no. I would say that
Right.
Palpatine, as much manipulating as he was doing, and as much as he had control over certain things, the fact that Anakin still had this love interest and was able to get into Padme's pants and get her knocked up and keep it a secret from everybody, I think that Palpatine was blinded from that as well. I think that if Palpatine knew straight away that that the twins were going to be born, that shit would have been eliminated right away or taken advantage of.
Well, even Obi-Wan said that in Return of the Jedi. You know, the Emperor knew if Anakin ever had any offspring, they would be a great threat to him. That's why you and your sister remain safely anonymous.
So yeah, exactly. You know, validating everything I just said. Thank you.
Yes. You're welcome.
Because they already said it. But
right.
But that's the thing. Like, so you wonder by being the chosen one, or by creating his own balance. He's creating this contradictory force, which, because without Leia, you know, we know the rebellion was forming. We know through Rebels and through other things, like there's always people that are going to be pushing up against this form of government that, you know,
sure,
that's the way they stood up and everything else. So like, you know what, we don't want being bullied around, and we're going to fight against this government or whatever.
Yeah, especially in a galaxy this big, a resistance is always going to happen.
Right. So that's not necessarily why Leia was put into existence, but she was definitely key in what was going on with the rebellion, whereas Luke was way more off to the side, you know.
Yeah.
And until he's, you know, basically brought out of hiding by happenstance, by the droids making it to Tatooine and finding Obi-Wan, and you know, and Obi-Wan's like, all right, well, here's the kid, he's over here.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of speculation as to, we know Obi-Wan was there to make sure Luke was safe, but to what end? You know, we still don't know that.
Yeah.
I don't think, it didn't seem like from anything that you would read that Obi-Wan was all of a sudden waiting to like spring Luke out and be like, all right, we're going to train, we're going to do this, you got to save the world, ready, kid, let's go.
Yeah.
No. You know, I think the Jedi were so, after they were annihilated and the veil of the dark side was so strong that the Jedi had to hide themselves, and therefore, like, my contention always was like, why did Obi-Wan get so old? Because, you know, if you look at it, that from Ewan McGregor's character, and he ages fairly rapidly between the two movies. I mean, you're just, you know,
I mean, it is still 20 years in between, but, you know, if you are masking yourself with the Force, that could take a lot out of you.
Yeah, or just by not using the Force and living that type of life, now you're, you know, it's like being in the military. Like, all right, we're going to PT every day until we get ready to get out. And all of a sudden, now your body's going to fail you because you we're doing all this shit for so long, and then all of a sudden it's just like, all right, we're done. You're not doing that shit anymore. Now you're not going to be able to walk hardly without taking half a dozen pills a day. So, I think we kind of veered off course a little bit when we were talking about, but it's just, well, I think it's an interesting point to bring up that, you know, Anakin being the chosen one has a couple of kids, and then now those kids are suddenly, you know, this is the flood season coming back, you know, as far as the dark side goes, because now there is this hope. Now it's not necessarily a prophecy at this point. You know, notice the prophecy goes away.
Right.
You know, there's no reference to it at all in the original trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get to TFA, even in a time when you think that in Force Awakens that this would be the time, like, to maybe have a conversation about the prophecy or something like that, and this is what happened. All that shit is like pushed back into the realm of myth and legend.
Yeah. Though that could come back, like, if we get any more detail on the sacred Jedi texts, you know. Yes, right as you were taking a drink.
Yes.
That's great.
I didn't spit any out.
That's good. But yeah, I mean, if part of episode 9 is Rey reading through all these old books, maybe the prophecy's in there. Maybe we get some more details, because as of right now, we don't know a whole lot. All we know is from like 3 sentences from the prequels that the Chosen One would be created through a virgins in the Force. They would bring balance, whatever that means, because we haven't truly defined what does it mean for the world to be balanced, for the universe to be balanced in the Force. Right. And then one interpretation, at least, of the Jedi was that the Chosen One would destroy the Sith, right? But is that just the Jedi saying that? Because Yoda specifically said in, I believe it was episode 2, like a prophecy misread could have been.
Right.
So,
exactly. Because they were talking about the boy.
Yeah.
You know, whether or not, like, is this really, is this the one? Could we have misread the prophecy? Mm-hmm. And again, it's all up to that. Like, how you interpret things in the way that's going to best serve you, in any aspect of anything that you're doing. And excuse me, I think Luke did the same thing when he was in search of whatever it is he was looking for, especially when it came to trying to figure out the Jedi, because he had nothing. He had Force ghosts, and he had an old man, and he had who ended up dying immediately. Then he had Yoda, who pretty much dies immediately after some training.
Yep.
And by the way, fucking Empire Strikes Back, the training scenes with fucking Yoda, that's some of this funniest shit with Luke doing handstands and fucking throwing rocks around and shit.
Yeah.
I just find it so amusing.
I just love when Yoda was fucking with him before he revealed that he was actually Yoda.
Yeah.
He was just acting like a bumbling fucking. When him and R2 were struggling for the fucking lamp or whatever.
Hitting him with his cane.
When like Yoda could have just like blew him into 1,000 pieces right there, but he was putting on a show for Luke, Right.
No, I can help you out. Come on, stop being a whiny little bitch. That was Yoda feeling him out. Like, is he gonna be all pissy and be a whiny bitch? Yes, he is, because that's apparently what Skywalkers do. But I think that when we get into the Rey conversation, especially, we alluded to it a little bit. As it stands right now, Rey has access to these sacred texts, and we're at the end of Last Jedi. We're being led to believe that the Jedi Order, that Luke was the last Jedi,
right? Hence the title.
Exactly. So, but you have somebody who's Force sensitive, who like is wielded herself in the Force. There is a Sith enemy, as far as kind of he's a guy that teeters. Again, we're on
talking about
balance. Ben. Yeah, with Ben.
But even before you continue, like, he's not truly Sith. He's using the dark side, but he doesn't subscribe to the teachings of the Sith at all. In fact, he even said as part of his speech to Rey, like, let it all die. The Jedi, the Sith, everything. So
I agree with that. He obviously was somebody who is influenced by. Look, we know from other material that the Sith are it's a being, not a religion.
It started off as an actual alien species.
Yes, it was a species.
So it morphed into the religion of the Sith.
Right. So I think that Ben was obviously manipulated by Snoke, or by whatever influenced him to turn to the dark side, believe that, hey, the legends of Vader, trying to cleanse and do the right thing for the galaxy is obviously what you should be doing, not running off and trying to resist like your father and your mother.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the conflict is. And right now, again, when we're talking about balance, to me, balance is the flood season and the dry season. So now we're probably as balanced as we're ever going to get in
like
this
right
universe.
now, in the current timeline.
In the current timeline, because you have Rey as a Force user who's interacted with Luke Skywalker, who's
Mhm.
and also so has Ben has interacted with Luke Skywalker, the Last Jedi.
Yeah.
Now Ben also had the influence of Snoke, but
Right.
I think those timelines are almost concurrent.
Yeah,
I
and you
don't.
know that. Yeah, and Ben uses a moderate amount of dark side while Ray leans more right or to the light, but they both feel the other side as well. Like Ray's had some dark side moments and Ben has had pulls to the light himself. So it's a very unique yin yang balance that we talked
it is. And that this is, like I said, this is as balanced as I think we're going to get in the Star Wars universe. And you know, if this being the dry season, then the flood is coming. Now, does that mean it's coming in the form of we're going to
tip one way or tip the other?
Yeah, are we going to suddenly see more Jedi? Or is Rey going to read these texts and realize that, you know, that piece is in fact a lie?
Yeah. And you know, that's interesting because, and you know, maybe the prophecy isn't limited to one being. Maybe that's the thing. Maybe the Force constantly gets imbalanced and there's always one being who brings everything back. Like, think about Darth Bane, even though it's not canon anymore, he fucking equalized fucking everything in that first book.
Right.
You know, that massive purge of both Sith and Jedi that he partook in. That was a balancing of the Force at that time. And then 1,000 years later, Palpatine and Vader did the same thing, balancing the Force. And now we're seeing it again with Rey and Ben. So maybe it's a constant thing. And there's always there's a new chosen one that keeps popping up to kind of level everything before the flood comes again.
And I think the big thing we're going to see, you know, as it applies to the next movie, we have to assume, we don't have to, but I'm assuming that with access to the sacred text and with Rey being probably the best option, with Leia being gone almost immediately, however they do that, and then Rey being the best option, like as their, like, it's just like, again, I'm going to make a Matrix, you know, reference, like with Neo, where Neo is like, I'm not necessarily the one, because he never really was. I mean, let's face it, you know, when it comes to the Matrix, Neo wasn't anything except for Smith. You know, it was the balance. Like, it was that.
To be fair, I only saw this first and second one, and I hated the second one so much I never saw the third. So,
well, regardless, I read the books too. Anyway, there's a lot more stuff in there, but
okay.
Regardless of all that, like, even if you're just watching it, it's like Neo being the one, the sum of the equation. You know, the only reason that actually everything works out in the end is that he has Smith, and him and Smith have to battle, and then they end up both dying. So anyway, I was going somewhere else with that until you fucking threw me off. Damn you. God damn you.
Well, I was talking about how there's constantly a new one popping up, like the Force constantly getting in balance, and a new one constantly popping up.
So we're in a spot now that we're ostensibly, even with the Snoke dead, the First Order is still ruling the galaxy.
Oh yeah,
that's what we're led to believe, and that there's more pockets of rebellion and resistance that have to be tapped into, that they've reached out to there at the end of The Last Jedi, and so they'll need somebody. They'll need basically a flag bearer.
Yeah, they'll need a hero.
Right, and
they're holding out for a hero to the end of the night, is what they're doing. They've got to be strong.
Got to be fast.
Sorry
for the fight. So they're going to use Rey. They're going to use Rey as this, unless they go some completely other way, where Rey just like disappears like Luke did, takes the texts, you know, like takes the Falcon, takes the texts, and goes, all right, fuck it. Let's go sit over here and try and figure out how to fuck what's going to happen next. Although I don't see that. I see them immediately having engagements against the First Order, because regardless of this rift between Hux and Ben, they still have. I guarantee you that Ben's going to be focused on fucking just annihilating Rey at this point.
You think so?
Yeah, he's going to be focused on her one way or the other. He's either focused on her to try and get her to turn, or focus on her because, like, she knows the truth about me. And if she figures it the fuck out that she can best me, then I'm done. So I gotta take care of that immediately.
So you don't think that there's any chance of them like having a romantic relationship again?
I don't think they had a romantic relationship initially.
Well, they had an intimate connection before that got kind of ruined at the end.
They did. Well, they had this connection where she really believed that she was like, it's that, you know, the,
which
I don't want to get to
sidebar. Hold on. Sidebar though, you know, he could have fucked her if he had just like played along when she's like, stop them from firing and we can protect the fleet. If he really wanted to bone her, he could have been just like, oh yeah, let's do that. We'll stop them. We'll be all light side now. And then he could have taken her in Snoke's getaway ship and like boned her on the way back to the thing. But he stuck to his convictions. He didn't let some broad convince him to go to the light side and give up his convictions just so he could get laid. No. He stuck with what he believed in.
This isn't the old Republic game, man. You're not jumping into the ship and boning fucking Twi'leks and shit. That's not what's happening in the.
I'm just saying.
I think that that intimacy it's from not the Stockholm syndrome. That's a completely different thing, but you know, it's that, hey, you were in a car wreck and some person that came out and saved your life. You know, Rey believes that she's the person that's going to save Ben. And maybe that's her function. So by doing that, then you know she finds some purpose. But instead,
well, he can change. I can change him.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, and at the end, he's like, he turns around and goes like, no, here's your chance. You can join me. We're gonna rule everything, or I'm gonna make you feel really bad about yourself and tell your parents are nobodies. And then you're just going to go, or you know, the Force is going to split them. Which, by the way, as we're talking about all this shit and the chosen one and all this other thing, there's a lot of assumptions made that the Force is controlling some of this, right? Somebody had to. The virgin birth had to happen, right? So the Force in this aspect is saying like, all right, we're going to push a billion metachlorians, aka sperm, into fucking, you know, Anakin's mom from somewhere. Who knows? Could have been some fucking, you know, some smuggler from fucking Canobite. But anyway, so she gets a fucking metachlorians pushed into her fucking ovaries. She gets impregnated, and now the chosen one pops out. Hey, so now he's fucking pod racing, doing his thing. The only way that this happens, unless Palpatine's the one that goes and fucking bones Anakin's old lady, or Anakin's mom, is that the Force did this to potentially create the balance, right? So now fast forward all the way to Force Awakens, right? So you have Rey and Ben in this battle where she could very easily have just fucking eliminated him. You know, she already beat the fuck out of him, right? He's laying on the ground, staring up, got, you know, face is all scarred up and everything else. And then suddenly the fucking ground opens up and separates them. Yep. You know, and I don't think anybody in the world sitting in that theater believed that was a coincidence.
Right,
that was
exactly.
The Force was separating them for some fucking reason. Now, in the future, is this just happenstance? You know, because we got to continue with these two characters. Like, no, they're not meant to kill each other. You know, I don't believe that they're meant to be romantically linked.
I don't think so.
I'm
holding out hope.
I think it'd be too easy. Honestly, they've already chosen, like, they decided like, no, Rey can't. Like, if you listen to Rian Johnson, it was a whole thing about how Rey can't be a Skywalker or anything else. It just doesn't. It wouldn't work or whatever. Blah blah blah.
Rian Johnson can go eat a dick. So
a whole bag of them, preferably.
Yeah.
But now we're at a point though where JJ is going to have to make decisions on those particular things, and I think it would be too easy. I think it'd be too easy to you know, if to see with the closing of episode 9, you know, Ben and Rey going off into the sunset. It almost be better off having like a Rogue One style ending where they sit there and there's like a realization that like, oh, yeah, this probably could have worked out, and then they go, woof, and they fucking turn to dust.
Yeah. So to kind of wrap this back into the whole balance and the prophecy discussion before we have to close it out here, do you think that storyline's already been wrapped up? Do you think we've already seen the chosen one, be it Anakin, maybe being Luke, maybe being Palpatine? Do you think that story is over, or do you think that might still be continuing through the current movies, through Episode 9?
I think the whole deal with the prophecy was, I think the prophecy has happened. From a storytelling perspective, Anakin, again, going with the virgin birth story. Okay. Mm-hmm. If the Force is going to create a convergence and you're going to have the chosen one, yes, I think the Jedi severely misinterpreted what the prophecy was going to be in the end. However, it did, like you said, create balance, because now it's like, okay, all we have are Jedi. Now there's no more Jedi. Now, just whatever dribs and drabs are left over, and this is going to create balance just by its very nature. Because the Jedi weren't able to. The Jedi weren't able to stop anything that was happening. Mm-hmm. So the Force, being what it was, or however you want to think the Force, exerts its will, decided that this is what it was going to do. Like, it's going to pop out this dude. And again, we see it in Episode 3. It's that moment where Mace Windu's standing there, and that was it. That was okay. This is the turning point. This is the turning point of everything. Not Episode 3. Was that Episode 3? Yeah, it was Episode 3.
Yeah. Where he was about to slash fucking Palpatine, Anakin's like, no, and he cuts off his hand, and that was the point. And we can't talk about Anakin possibly being the chosen one without mentioning
that you can't keep peanuts in your mouth. That's good. I guess it's a good thing you can't keep nuts in your mouth.
No comment. But we can't not mention Anakin's final act before his death, and that was to kill Palpatine. So that whole imbalance, the whole imbalance from the Jedi, they purged all the Jedi, but then it became the cloud of the dark side, and then Anakin ultimately got rid of that as well. So
which
was him.
Which we're led to believe, but Palpatine being Palpatine, and knowing that the story continues after that, Palpatine had contingency plans for all of this, for him not winning, and making sure that there was still a presence, whether that was Snoke over with Rey Sloane hanging out on the other side of the unknown regions, like the books would lead to.
Well, in that sense, we're talking about a government and not necessarily the Force. Maybe with Snoke, but for the most part, that's all shit outside of the balance of the Force itself. The balancing of the Force, I think, is, the killing off of these light side and dark side people to eventually equal everything out.
Well, I agree with you. I partially agree with you there, but because we have this point right now where there's obviously not peace, because the First Order still rules, and they're holding their thumb against, Hitler style, against the rest of the galaxy. Mm-hmm. And so you need this. So there is no balance. Maybe from a Force perspective, from a Force user perspective, we have that balance with Ben and Rey, but from the overall balance of things, we're still way too one-sided. So now I think you're gonna see Rey as the Joan of Arc style, like, gather everyone together to overthrow the First Order, probably ultimately changing Ben over, converting him at the last minute and saving him in some way, in the same style as Return of the Jedi. Mm-hmm. Maybe not with such finality, but at the same time, I still don't think that creates. I think balance and peace is a lie. I agree with that wholeheartedly. It's again, anything that comes in balance in your life, you have to understand death to appreciate life. You have to understand, the good. In order to understand the good, you have to have the bad. Like you can't just, there's no, you have to have that. And so, if you're not experiencing the bad and you happen to be having good, the bad's going to come around. And you just, it's about finding that, you know, there's no perfect solution for that. And so far we've been really, really fortunate, because in all of this, all these things that we've been talking about, movies we've watched, and especially in the movies, not so much in the books because it doesn't get into the macro level.
Yeah.
Star Wars Galaxy for the most part. Aftermath did to a point, but
a little bit.
Everything kind of stays within that, you know, in that area of balance that we're talking about, where there's still good fighting evil. There's still people, you know, experiencing good and also the bad. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And maybe after episode 9, we'll have more to talk about along these lines, but it's a unique discussion. And listeners, if you have anything that you want to chime in on as far as this topic goes, hit us up on social media, particularly the private Facebook group, because that's where we're doing a lot of our conversing with other listeners these days. So yeah, hop onto our private Facebook group and talk to us on there and tell us what you think, because we're not getting much chat today for some reason.
Well, I think they're aside from Wicked being the chosen one.
Yeah.
The Thundersword kid here from Finland who's writing his own Star Wars book. You see that in the chat?
Oh.
His handle is the Thundersword. Yeah. And I'm not going to say how old he is, but he's a young guy from Finland, and he's writing his own Star Wars book. So Thundersword, that is fantastic. I'm glad that you're from Finland, so you're learning a lot of, I'm sure your English is better than ours, and hopefully you're learning a lot of curse words, and some nuances like, bags of dicks and whatnot. So, but yeah, I'm curious for your book, what type of book you're writing, and make sure are you including elements like this, like when we're talking about the chosen one, and elements with the Force, for sure.
Yeah,
it is. It is a very esoteric conversation. As I've said multiple times, apparently it's my word of the day. But I think Jason and I we see it the same way. Like the chosen one being Anakin, makes the tipping point for what happens to change the balance of what's going on with the Jedi in a very, very visceral way, because he basically eliminates the Jedi Order almost single-handedly. So I don't think the Jedi saw it that way. They're like, oh, he's gonna bring balance to the Force, and but they couldn't see what that meant, because again, that veil of the dark side had been clouding them for some time. By the time all that happened, and they were willing to see what they wanted and interpret it. And it's like anything else, anything you read, whether it's the sacred Jedi texts,
the
Bible, what the Quran, whatever it is that you're reading it inside a context that you want it. It's going to work out best for you. Yeah.
You'll interpret it the way that best suits your ideals and your purpose and everything else.
And I think ultimately that's what the Jedi did with this prophecy. Yeah. And we're really unable to foresee what it really meant to have balance. So anyway.
So that was good. Good discussion. Social media.
Because I think we only have about 5 minutes left.
Yeah. We gotta wrap this up.
Social media. I'm going to go to our podcast Control V page to make sure I don't fuck this up. So on Instagram, we're at All Things Star Wars Pod, as we have been for the past year. On Facebook, we're facebook.com/AllThingsStarWarsPod. If you go to our website, AllThingsStarWarsPod.com, it takes you to our Facebook page. Get involved in our private group. If you're a listener to the podcast, get involved in our private group. There's lots of fun stuff happening there, mainly busting Dave's balls about the holiday special.
Bronco Fett just typed a new message for you in the chat too. Make sure you check that out.
Fuck you. Fuck you, Bronco Fett. Oh man. Yes. Oh. Anyway, follow us on iTunes, subscribe, share with your friends, give us 5-star reviews, please, please, please. You can now follow us on YouTube at youtube.com/C, as in copy.
Centennial.
Sure. youtube.com/C/AllThingsStarWars. Again, YouTube content. We're doing all this via YouTube. And then when you get your download from iTunes, we extract the audio, and Jason makes me sound better. Twitter, we're All Things SW Pod. On the Twitch, which we haven't done in a long time, but it's still out there. I thought about actually logging into Star Wars the other day and playing a little bit, but I just didn't have time.
Yeah.
We're All Things Star Wars on Twitch. Minds.com/AllThingsStarWars. It's an alternative social media site. Get on there. You can leave us reviews there as well, I think. If not, just check it out. Or you could email us old school at allthingsstarwarspod@gmail.com.
Yeah. All right. And again, next week is our 1-year anniversary episode, our May the 4th special. We're gonna have some calling guests. Yeah, and we're gonna talk about just like what it's been this last year has been like for us and doing the show, and we'll talk to some listeners and get some nice interaction with them. I've been wanting to talk to a couple of these guys for a while now, so it'll be good to actually get them on the horn and do some Q&A with them. I think you even had a little trivia idea, which I think would be real fun.
Well, yeah, we'll have to see how it works out with the timing. If we can make that timing work out, that'd be great. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be a fun episode. And just the reality of a year of doing this is actually pretty amazing. This one's episode 53, so
that'll be 54. Yeah,
it's been fun, man.
Yeah.
So with that,
we need to close it out only because we're getting close to our time limit here with the audio and everything else. So, Dave, may the force be with you.
May the force be with you.